Yeah, please do. Whatever. Please put your mics up here. Amelia, this says there's a big hum. Should we turn this thing off?
Where's the box?
Is the box back there? Ask me if you can, in the meantime, fix the hum. Hey, how are you? Well, we have one, but it was humming, so we're going to see if we can fix it. I think. Sorry. We're going to try to fix it in the next couple of minutes. Hopefully it works out, but just to be on the safe side, yeah.
That's it for sorry.
Yeah.
You want your sounding good.
Oh, you got it?
Cool. I'm gonna move you first for a minute, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Can you turn it off? I don't need it.
You don't need it?
Hey, I heard you updated your phone number.
Hi. How are you? Hi, Barbara. How are you? Good. How are you?
Doing all right? How you doing?
I'm good.
You need to stand? Oh, you got one.
I'll just stand, yeah.
Hey, James, they're saying there's a hum on the. Is it? AC? Okay. Well,
No, it's not.
it's not.
That is not coming from an AC unit.
It's not. Nope.
I don't think it is. You guys think it is?
I don't know, he was real affected by his phone. Almost up with his phone.
Yeah.
By whose phone? Your phone.
He had his phone over there with the guy with the flashlight.
I try to keep my ugly big thing out of the way.
Yeah, try and keep it out of the way, just put it dead center.
Oh, another one.
Anyone,
If you need any, I got gaffer tape if anyone needs any.
Can you give me his little slice of that?
Yeah, me too.
Hey man, can you do me a favor? Is a roll of gaffer tape in my roller there? Can you hand it to me? Yeah.
But the good thing is all
Appreciate
Hey, don't be
it.
touching that. Touch that, Steve.
It's station property.
No, it's my assigned property.
You're welcome to touch mine if you. I can get you other in there.
Thanks.
Don't say I never did nothing for you, Gabe.
All right, can I get a piece of tape from you too, please? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, just when you're done with the gaffer, just give it back to me. I appreciate it, guys.
Yes. Uno, dos, tres. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Thank you. Other units open.
Yeah, I need some ideas.
No clean ones.
Your mic keeps falling off of here.
Who does?
What? This tape is not very sticky. Look at that. I just set mine here. I'm not gonna.
Oh, you're not even
do
gonna mess
it.
with it.
This tape's not very good.
That's fair.
Thank you.
Everybody set? You guys hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay. My name is David Gonzalez, Gonzales, and I'm the United States Marshal for the District of Arizona. And I'll start here in a minute. We're all ready? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is David Gonzalez. I'm the United States Marshal for the District of Arizona. Thank you all for being here. As you all know, there's been a massive manpower search for two fugitives. The search for Blaine Barksdale, the Arizona murder suspect who escaped custody with his wife, Susan, intensified today as the U.S. Marshals Service added Blaine to its 15 most wanted list. Persons placed on the U.S. Marshals top 15 list are usually career criminals with histories of violence and whose instant offenses pose a significant threat to public safety. Blaine Barksdale has a dubious distinction of fulfilling that requirement. Being placed on our top 15 list prioritizes the investigation and apprehension and also raises the award amount to up to $25,000. Now, let me give you a little bit of background on this case. On August 26th at approximately 8:30 in the morning, Blaine Barksdale, 56, and his wife Susan, 59, escaped custody while being extradited back to Tucson from the Syracuse, New York area. I might add here that they were in jail in Syracuse, New York on the original charge of homicide. U.S. Marshals had arrested the Barksdales in Syracuse in late May, and they were awaiting extradition or transfer back to Pima County to face those charges. While on their travel back to Tucson, Pima County, which was being transported by a private security firm, the husband and wife team overpowered and kidnapped two security officers and a third inmate who was also being transported, who was picked up in Kansas City near Blanding, Utah. The couple then drove the prisoner van with the three locked in the back to Vernon, Arizona. Vernon is a small community between Show Low and Springerville, where they obtained a red GMC Sierra pickup truck from an acquaintance. One of the Barksdales then drove the pickup truck from where they obtained it, while the other followed in the prisoner van. After a few miles, they abandoned the prisoner van, and the Barksdales drove off together in the pickup. The Barksdales and the red GMC have not been seen since. After several hours, the security guards and the other prisoner in transit were able to break out of the prisoner van. The keys were in the prisoner van, and at which time they drove to St. John's in Apache County. What they did is they got on their phone and basically called 911. They had no idea where they were, not familiar with the area, and they were given instructions to drive to the Apache County Sheriff's Department in St. John's. The United States Marshals Service, who initially had this case, the initial case, at the request of the Tucson Police Department, we were notified at 11:30 p.m. of the escape. What have we done since we were notified and since the escape? Well, we have done a lot, and I'll explain. We immediately sent deputy marshals in the Tucson area to known locations where the Barksdales had lived and acquaintances, and worked out through the night to see if there were any leads there. Within the next couple of days, our Special Operations Group, our National Special Operations Group, which was basically our SWAT teams, converged on the area, and to assist because of the seriousness of their crimes and the area that we believed they were in, and still might be there, but we're not sure, and I'll explain that in a little bit. We believe, based on tips, calls into the Marshals Service from informants, from interviews, that the Barksdales were possibly in east of the Snowflake area. And east of Snowflake, Arizona, several miles, and going for probably 20 miles, are a lot of people who live off the grid. Some are anti-government people. Some are good people that just want to stay away and lead their lives. We have a lot of drug dealers in the area who are involved in methamphetamine use and sales, and it is a very difficult area to do surveillance and for people to come forward. We spent almost 2 weeks, over 40 deputies, and also working with our partners, with Apache County, Navajo County, DPS, FBI, and Tucson PD, working this case around the clock since their escape on the 26th. And as I mentioned, we have not had any solid leads where they might be. We felt very comfortable that they were in the Snowflake area based on that the pickup truck that they left, and I'm sure everybody has seen on the freeway advisory notification boards, and also that the Barksdale's not one sighting has been reported to us. We received hundreds of calls, as I mentioned, of sightings, but none of those have turned out so far. And we worked the area for about, like as I mentioned, for about 2 weeks because we were convinced, based on the truck disappearing, the type of area that they were in where they could hide out very easily and remain basically burrowed in some of these, I call them compounds up there. It is very easy for someone who wants to avoid the law to hide out for long periods of time. After doing this for about 2 weeks with no sightings, no concrete leads, we decided to change the direction of this investigation from a rapid manpower search to an intense fugitive search and investigation. And the difference is, instead of having 40, 50 police officers and agents on the ground, we're going to pull back a little bit, reset our investigation, go over other leads that we haven't gotten to, historical issues involving these two, and we will still have a major presence in the Snowflake, Show Low, Apache County, and Navajo counties, and working closely and with our law enforcement partners there. And as I mentioned, Blaine Barksdale being placed on the top 15 list raises the reward to up to $25,000. Susan Barksdale, I haven't forgotten about her, has been elevated to a major case with a reward of up to $10,000 for Susan, so a total of $35,000 for both of them. We also have a reward for the red GMC Sierra pickup truck, and the Arizona registration number on that is 127. X is an X-ray, T is in Tom, Y is in Young, and which has not been seen since they picked it up the night of the 26th. We are asking for anybody that might know of their whereabouts or any information to call the United States Marshals Service or 911 immediately. We feel that they armed and dangerous, and it's individuals that should not be approached, and to let local or our agency handle any arrests or any issues that come with them. At this point, I'd like to introduce the Chief Deputy for the United States Marshals Service, Tim Hughes, H-U-G-H-E-S. Tim, would you like to add to the information?
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Marshal. This case is a major case for the U.S. Marshals Service. Being part of the 15 most wanted makes them a priority nationally. Our goal here in the Marshal Service is to bring them to justice. And with this help of raising it to a major case and raising it to a 15 most wanted, we'll have more resources available. We'll be able to develop more leads and hopefully soon have them where they need to be, which is behind bars.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Do I have any questions for anybody?
The reward for the vehicle, how much is that?
It's $5,000 to find the vehicle, and we usually do a reward for a vehicle, but we think there might be some information that we can obtain for the vehicle. Now, it's very interesting that when the two security guards and the other prisoner were locked in the rear of the van, they drove to Vernon, as I mentioned. They were able to get another vehicle from an acquaintance, and at that point, one of the Barksdales drove the pickup truck, another Barksdale drove the van. They went outside of Vernon and abandoned them out in the desert area, that high desert area, and left them there. We don't know where they did that because the people that were kidnapped had no clue where they were, absolutely no clue. They were able to get on their phone, as I mentioned, and call 911 and were directed to the nearest town of St. John's, where they were able to report it. It took them a couple of hours to break out of that van, and I'm sure they went through a terrible situation, but frightened, what have you. But we do not know exactly where they were dropped off, and we're still trying to locate that. Yes.
So were the security officers armed, and did the Barksdales take their weapons, or how do you know if they're armed?
The security people were not armed. Well, if I can clarify that, there was a gun box in the van with a gun in it, but it was not, evidently the Barksdales did not see it or were not aware of it, so they did not have a gun when they left the van and the individuals.
So given no verified gun taking, if you will, we can safely assume that they somehow managed to acquire a weapon along the way.
Well, yes, and we're assuming that they at this point that they do have weapons. When this homicide was committed in Tucson, they took approximately 100 weapons from the victim's home, in addition to a large amount of money. About a third of those weapons have been located, and the others are still out there somewhere. Plus, we're also assuming that maybe when this acquaintance gave him or loaned him his truck, that he might have obtained weapons there, but we haven't confirmed that.
What's going on with that acquaintance with the truck?
He is a person of interest, obviously, and we will be talking to him probably in more detail, but our priority at this point is to find the Barksdale and get him off the street and back in jail where they belong.
Is he being helpful?
I'm not going to comment on that, but he is a person of interest who he has a story to tell, and we have some very hard questions to ask that individual. Pardon? And we don't think he's probably in the truck. Common sense would tell you that truck is pretty hot. I think everybody in Arizona can memorize the license plate number at this point. So we really don't think they're in the truck. But you never know. We think that truck is hidden out, maybe covered in a barn, buried somewhere east of Snowflake. But we just don't know, because it literally just disappeared off the face of the earth, and we would like to find it.
But do you think they didn't escape out of the Snowflake area, even in different vehicles that we haven't identified?
Well, that's a possibility, absolutely. And I want to stress, we were concentrating very heavily in the Snowflake area, in the Navajo County area and into Apache County area, because of the type of people that he associated with that lived in that area, people that he had gang affiliations with, and it was a pretty good gamble. It really was. But I must add that they could be anywhere in the U.S. So we were keeping our eyes open. We don't want to put blinders on to think that that's the only place they could. They could have snuck off into New Mexico. We don't believe they're in Mexico, but running, as I mentioned, we have 40 or plus deputy marshals and FBI's assisting, and Tucson PD tracking down hundreds and hundreds of leads and going back historically that you normally do on these type of investigations, and other investigative efforts that we do on high-profile cases like this. And
in handcuffs in the back of this transport van, and did they just take an opportunity when the security officers opened the door? I mean, how did
my understanding is when they left the jail that morning to leave for Arizona, that they were in belly chains, and right outside in Utah, the Barksdales complained that they had intestinal issues, and they needed to go to the bathroom. And when they pulled over in the van to let them use the restroom and take care of their personal needs, that's when they overpowered them and forced them into the back of the van and left the area. The third prisoner, who was being transported to Tucson, was very cooperative. He was wanted in Pima County for improper use of credit cards, wasn't a violent crime. And he had this individual had an opportunity to also escape, but he wanted nothing to do with this situation and cooperating with law enforcement. So it's a belly chain wrapped in front of him with handcuffs.
So are their feet free?
I believe they're free. Their feet they were free to move around with their legs.
Why were they being driven and not flown to Arizona?
That's a good question. You know, it happens a lot in the United States with sheriff's departments, with budgets shrinking. They have fugitives around the country that need to be extradited back home, and instead of using sworn police officers, a lot of agencies will use private security companies to pick up prisoners and bring them back. I would have preferred that maybe they had flown some deputy marshal or deputy sheriffs or whoever out and flew them back. You could have done that in 2 days. That must have been a very long drive from Syracuse, New York, all the way back. It's almost like a shuttle van, if you will. They're picking up prisoners, they're dropping them off. Also, dovetailing with that, a lot of sheriff's departments and counties, because of the cost of bringing back prisoners, if they're not arrested in the 100-mile radius of where they're arrested, they will not extradite them. So this is not an unusual situation that goes on for sheriff's department bringing fugitives back to their jurisdiction.
What about keeping the couple together? Is that typical?
I would say, yeah, and I would say it's not typical, but I think the Pima County Sheriff's Department will deal with those issues. My job is to find the Barksdales and bring them in, and so that whole situation on their transportation and escape is another sidelight, interesting story, no question, and lessons learned that I think will be used around the country on how to bring prisoners back on extradition, on how you do it, but as I mentioned, the costs are astronomical to bring prisoners back to your jurisdiction, and a lot of agencies do not have the budget anymore to do that. The Pima County Sheriff's Department had a contract with this company to do this, which is, like I said, it's not unusual around the country to have contracts with private firms to do that.
Popular belief that the couple might be hidden under the assistance of a friend or an acquaintance.
Yes.
What sort of charges could someone face for assisting in hiding them?
Well, I don't think there's any question that there are people that are assisting in harboring these individuals, and it is a felony, a federal felony, and also there's local charges for that, and where they could face prison time, and we take that very seriously also, and that's another part of this investigation that we are looking into. But as I mentioned, we are prioritizing finding these people first. But that it's very serious, and I would stress to anybody that is assisting those individuals that we will come after them also.
It looks like could this have been pre-planned? I mean, they had to have known where they were in Vernon and how to get to their
Yeah.
and everything. So, I mean, the guards didn't know where they were. I mean, they must have known where they were.
Yeah, and
Was it planned ahead of time?
you know,
They would do this and have a car ready for them?
it was asked if it was pre-planned. And we discussed that heavily during this investigation because it is a very strange route to come through, eastern Utah into northeastern Arizona. But I think the way they drop off and pick up prisoners, it might not have been unusual. But it sure seems suspicious that it wasn't that far from where the Barksdales do have acquaintances and we're familiar with the area. So
Did they know their route then?
we don't think so, but that is part of what we're looking into. No, the guards at this point, they're really not, we don't consider them suspects. They are kidnap victims, but it's the pattern of where they came could be legitimate, but it does raise some questions on the route. But we don't have any specific information that this was pre-planned or the guards were in on it. It was a big conspiracy. We have no information whatsoever that occurred.
Are you guys confident that they're not in Mexico? You said that
No, we're not confident. They could be anywhere in the world, but we feel pretty strongly that they have not gotten into Mexico because we have with our connections and our relationships with CBP and Border Patrol and some of their investigative equipment they have down there, we would have spotted that, but we have not seen that whatsoever. Also, if fugitives are going to go into Mexico, you have to have some kind of financial wherewithal to do that, and they stand out pretty much. And we work very closely with our Mexican counterparts. My district alone here in Arizona, we arrest hundreds and hundreds of fugitives in Mexico and work very closely with our Mexican counterparts there. And they would have stood out. They literally had no money when they left off. They took some money from the guards, maybe $30. Maybe they got some money from some acquaintances. We don't know yet, but they would have needed more money if they were going to Mexico. Well, I think it's primarily because of the way the homicide went down, and his involvement and her involvement might not have been the same. We believe that Blaine is the primary focus of this case, and based on his background, has an extensive criminal background. He's a career criminal. Gang affiliations, where Susan not so much. So I think she was obviously with him. She was charged also, but we don't consider her on the same plane as Blaine is. All right.
What about these gang contacts? What gang and how would you describe these individuals? Because these are the folks that might be assisting them, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, and we've said it before. The gang affiliations are prison gangs, and obviously somebody like Blaine in prison, both local, with both state and federal prison, would be associated with Aryan Brotherhoods, white supremacist gangs. So those are the type of individuals we think that might be assisting.
And were they from the Snowflake area, or
The
originally the Barksdales? I mean, is that primarily where their
well,
associations, or?
we know that he spent a lot of time up in that part of the state of Arizona. We're not sure if he was from there, but very familiar with the area, has a lot of acquaintance up there, a lot of friends there, and has spent a lot of time up in the Apache and Navajo County areas east of Snowflake. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I do appreciate you all being here because this assists us also. Hopefully one of your viewers will see this and will call us. And Tim, do you have the phone numbers to call both nationally and locally? I know.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The number we'd like people to call if they have a tip on this case is wanted 2. Again, that's 877-wanted-2 or 877-926-8332.
Yeah, that's a national number, toll-free number. Also, 911 if you do see him. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And if anyone needs anything in Spanish, you do it.
Yeah. We got Aldo back here. We'll do any Spanish speaking.